The needs of foster and adopted children. Children who lack parental care typically experience more early life adversity and challenges in development, specifically children in the foster care and adoption institutions. We received our information from the review article called Adoption, Fostering, and the Needs of Looked After and Adopted Children, written by Philip A. Fisher. The review focuses on 3 points. First, the effects of early adversity on these children. Second, resilience in these kids. And third, possible interventions. The rare instances of child abuse or the foster child behaving so poorly are sensationalized by the media, turning foster parents or foster children into villains, while celebrating the situations where a foster child becomes successful. Truthfully, foster care and adoption are neither hopeless nor an absolute solution. Although both have the potential to alter a child's life positively and negatively, they each provide a social safety net preventing vulnerable children from being left without a source of nurturing care.
When talking about adopted and looked after kids, we have to talk about the effects. So, many of the effects that are associated with these children are related to the high amount of stress put on the child at such a young age. Some of the long-term effects include mental health problems, attachment issues, school adjustment, and physical health problems. The effects on mental health include higher rates of psychopathology and maladjustment, and mental health problems are apparent in both foster and adopted kids. Both groups of children have higher rates of internalizing disorders, meaning they keep things to themselves more often. These disorders include things like depression, anxiety, and PTSD. These kids also show signs of externalizing disorders, which are issues directed towards a person's environment. Adopted children have been seen to show signs of ADHD, oppositional defiant disorder, and conduct disorder. These effects are even more problematic because they can cause more issues like bullying for the troubled child. Looked after children have also been seen to have significant problems with cognitive, language, and emotional development. These children have trouble expressing themselves and putting their feelings into words. Both adopted and foster children have shown poor emotional development as well as having poor performance on tests when compared to non-maltreated kids. The early stress that these children go through has been seen to cause neuroendocrine functioning and brain development issues. One of the interesting findings was that the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, or the HPA functioning, was different in adopted and looked after children when compared to non-adopted kids. Research showed that the cortisol levels in the brain, which detects the activation of the HPA axis, was effective. When individuals typically have elevated levels of cortisol, which it happens in higher stress conditions, looked after children were seen to have a pattern of blunted cortisol production, meaning their levels were much lower. Typically, cortisol levels are higher shortly after waking up in the morning and decrease rapidly throughout the day. But in looked after children, their morning cortisol level is low and remains so throughout the day. Researchers have explained this finding with the chronic stress levels had by looked after kids. The most apparent group of kids with these findings is those that have been neglected. You may not realize that being adopted or fostered has an effect. One of the biggest points regarding this issue is failure to thrive syndrome. This is when children tend to be smaller in height and weight for their age, and also have a smaller head circumference than non-looked after children. You may originally think that this difference could be due to nutritional deficits, but this was not the case, as the height-to-weight ratio was not diminished, and therefore this led doctors and researchers to believe that it was their upbringing that affected the child's size. One effect that is not surprising for this type of situation is attachment issues. Many kids, due to their constant placement transitions or their unsteady upbringing, suffer from insecure attachment. This causes them to be scared and not get comfortable with who they are living with or where they are going. One thing that is different is the idea of indiscriminate friendliness, which is where children approach strangers and are physically affectionate with them. This behavior was seen in both adopted and foster children. This is likely due to the child's attachment styles, but it does not happen in all kids. Many of the effects that we have already talked about are what play a role on the effects on school performance. Looked after and adopted children have been seen to have difficulties in school adjustment, academic achievement, and peer relationships. This is likely due to insecure attachment and social disinhibition. Social disinhibition is a form of disregard of the social norms. Therefore, it can cause children to stand out from their peers. Their high-stress environment could cause the issues with academic achievement and adjustment. The adjustment in peer relationships would most likely be problematic because of the child's insecure attachment pattern.
Created using Powtoon.